Hare Krishna. I am Radhika Pyari Devidasi, and this is the continuation of the Mahabharat series retold by Krishna Dharma Prabhu. Chapter 19, Part 2, The Kauravas Rally. After Jayadratha's death, the Kaurava warriors expressed their sorrow. Seeing so many of their number slain, the soldiers condemned Dhritarashtra and his son, censuring them for their wicked policies. The warriors praised Yudhishthira and his brothers. Sunk in despair, Duryodhana rode back to his camp. He sat on the terrace of his chariot with his head lowered. Unable to look at anyone, his mind dwelt only on the day's events. Surely there was no warrior equal to Arjuna. Neither Drona, Kripa, nor even Karna could even stand before him. Indeed, the whole army combined could not stop him from killing Jayadratha. Duryodhana wept in his agony. Entering his tent, he took his seat, followed by Drona and his other generals. No music played in his camp, and the bards were silent. Struggling to maintain his composure, the Kaurava prince addressed Drona in a voice strained with grief. O preceptor, behold the carnage among the kings who have come to our side. Even the mighty Bhishma lies prostrate on the battlefield. The Pandavas have slaughtered 7 Akshahunis of our troops. Today your disciple fulfilled his vow and killed Jayadratha, even though you opposed him with an impenetrable array of troops. Many lords of the earth, desiring to do us good, have gone to Yamraja's abode. How can I repay my debt to them? Being nothing more than a coward, I have destroyed my friends and relatives. The earth should swallow me, covetous, sinful, and opposed to virtue as I am. My own grandsire lies on a bed of arrows due to my wicked desires. What will he say when he meets me in the next world? Duryodhana stopped speaking and wept openly. He buried his head in his hands and cried out the names of his slain brothers. Karna came over and comforted him. Gradually he gained control of himself and sat up. He sat staring straight ahead for some time, wringing his hands and breathing heavily. His mind moved between despair and the desire for revenge. All was not lost. The Kauravas still had Drona, Karna, Ashwathama, and other powerful heroes. Perhaps they could yet defeat the Pandavas, or at least capture or kill Yudhishthira. In any circumstance, surrender was impossible. It would be better to be slain down to the last man than to hand over the kingdom to the Pandavas after all this. That was the least the surviving Kauravas could do to repay their slain colleagues. With tears running down his face, Duryodhana continued, O foremost of warriors, I swear that I will obtain peace only by slaying the Pandavas or by being slain by them. I will follow the path taken by our friends and relatives. Seeing us overpowered by our enemies, our partisans are losing faith in our power. They are openly praising the Pandavas. With Bhishma fallen and you fighting only mildly, O preceptor, our troops think we have no protector. It seems that Karna alone is anxious for our success. Like a fool, I have depended on one who is a friend only in words. Greedy for wealth and sinful, my mind blinded by desire, I have placed my hopes where they were bound to be thwarted. As a result, Jayadratha and so many other great kings all lie dead on the battlefield. O Drona, permit me therefore to lay down my life in battle, just as all these men have done. Drona removed his helmet and long gloves, placing them by his side. His sinewy arms were lacerated with arrow wounds, and skilled physicians applied herbal dressing to the cuts, but Duryodhana's reproachful words stung him more than the wounds. He turned to the prince. Why, O king, do you pierce me with words as sharp as darts? I have repeatedly told you that no one can defeat Arjuna in battle. Seeing Bhishma brought down, I am convinced that we are doomed. The dice Shakuni threw against the Pandavas have returned against us as blazing arrows. Vidura warned you of this, but you did not heed him. He who ignores his well wishers and goes his own way is stupid, and is soon reduced to a pitiable condition. You have brought about this calamity upon us all by dragging Draupadi into the Kuru assembly and insulting her. Such a sinful deed cannot go unpunished. Drona had heard enough from Duryodhana. He reminded him of every wicked act he had performed against the Pandavas, making it clear that the Kauravas had no one to blame but themselves for their present suffering. They had been warned many times that fighting the Pandavas would not result in success. Drona looked at Duryodhana and his surviving brothers. Bhima had already slain half of them. The remainder were a sorry sight in their grief and frustration. Drona felt that it was still his duty to afford them whatever protection he could, but there was little hope. Standing up with his hand on his ivory hilted sword, he said, "Seeing me sinking in the ocean of the Pandavas' prowess, you should not enhance my grief. O king, you are now my final determination. I will not take off my armor again until all the Panchalas are slain. My son will kill the Somakas. With those two armies gone, it may be possible for us to defeat the Pandavas." Drona indicated Kripa. "Here is the invincible Acharya. Our enemies cannot kill him. Let him exert his full power to kill the kings who have sided with the Pandavas. O Duryodhana, worship Brahmins and offer them many gifts. Make offerings into the sacred fire and propitiate the deities. We will make one last great effort. Tomorrow I will ride at the head of your army with my weapons ablaze. You will see me penetrate the Pandava ranks like a lion entering a herd of cows." Cheered by Drona's words, the Kauravas slowly retired for the night, exhausted from the day's fighting. Dhritarashtra sat silently on his throne. By his side, Sanjaya gently dabbed his brow with a soft cloth soaked in cool water. The old king had lost consciousness when he heard how Bhima had slain over 30 of his sons in one day. Returning to consciousness, he learned that Arjuna had succeeded in his vow to kill Jayadratha. Struck dumb with grief, he moaned softly. Was there any hope for the Kauravas when their entire force could not prevent Arjuna from reaching the Sindhu king? The blind monarch spoke in a voice barely rising above a whisper. "O best of all my servants, tell me how my surviving sons are now faring, having seen their army routed and Jayadratha slain. Day by day my fame dwindles. Numerous powerful warriors on my side are being killed. All this due to the adverse influence of fate." Dhritarashtra broke off, shaking his head. Arjuna smashed into our host, which was protected by Drona and Karna. Even the gods could not have stopped him. Surely he is as irresistible as the surging ocean. And then there is Bhima. Half my sons are dead. Bhima will not rest until he has killed the other half. In the meantime, Arjuna, aided by Dhritarashtra and Satyaki, will annihilate the other Kuru heroes. It is hard to believe. At the beginning of the war, our army outnumbered the Pandavas 2 to 1. Now only 4 of our 11 divisions remain to the Pandavas 3. The odds are now almost equal. His head down, Dhritarashtra listened as Sanjaya described the conversation between Duryodhana and Drona. Hearing that the preceptor had again vowed to slay the Pandava forces, the old king became encouraged. The war was not over. Drona and Karna were still alive, as well as Kripa, Ashwathama, and a number of other warriors. They would be burning with anger and a desire to avenge Jayadratha's death. Perhaps, too, Arjuna would be fatigued after exerting himself so tremendously. Things may yet turn the other way. Wars had often been won by rallying troops when all had seemed hopeless. Sanjaya, seeing Dhritarashtra looking more hopeful, said, "O king, you should not forget that Krsna is the Pandavas' guide and protector. It was due to his help that Arjuna succeeded today. Your men have no hope if they oppose Keshava in battle. He is the unfailing defender of the righteous and the annihilator of the demonic. Steeped in sin and ignorant of virtue, your sons are bringing a terrible calamity upon themselves and their friends. Their single hope lies in returning the Pandavas' rightful property. However, O king, I fear the opportunity for that has passed. This is your fault. It will result in a massive destruction of Kshatriyas. Dhritarashtra remembered the inconceivable form Krishna had displayed in the hall where he now sat. After that, he had heard about Krishna's many glories from the rishis' descriptions he had heard before. Trying to bring the king to his senses, the rishis had again reminded him how Krishna had killed numerous asuras who were capable of assuming forms at will and who had terrorized even the gods. Feeling a strange sense of peace as he thought of Krishna, Dhritarashtra said, "If by chance we are able to defeat the Pandavas, we will still have to contend with Keshava. For their interest, he will take up his irresistible discus and brush against my forces like the all consuming fire of universal destruction. After destroying the Kurus, he will offer the earth to Kunti. I do not see how we can attain victory. Duryodhana is ignorant of Krishna's position and power. The faithless fool is a slave to his own senses. He can never understand the absolute truth. He is like a child who wishes to extinguish fire with his hands. Arjuna and Krishna are united as one soul. Their aims and desires are one, and even the mighty Shiva cannot thwart them." Thinking of his son, the king again felt sorrow fill his heart. Would he ever see him again? It seemed unlikely. He would probably die in this battle. Yet the ways of fate were inscrutable. Even Krishna, it seemed, could not prevent Abhimanyu's death. Surely he could not have wanted that son of his dear friend and sister to die. Gripped by the duality of realizing the inevitable and yet hoping to resist it, the king rose from his seat and his servants led him away. He told Sanjaya to return the next day and recount any events of the night and how the battle began again. As the sun rose on the 14th day, Duryodhana, seething as he recalled the events of the previous day, spoke with Karna. "How was it possible for Arjuna to penetrate our ranks yesterday? Before your eyes he slew Jayadratha. Even with Krishna's devious trick, it should still not have been possible. My once vast army has been reduced to a pitiable few by Shakra's son. Surely this must be Drona's desire. I cannot accept that the preceptor is fighting to his full power. If he had opposed Arjuna with all his strength yesterday, then Jayadratha would not have been killed. Arjuna is exceedingly dear to the magnanimous Drona. Fool that I was, I believed him when he promised to protect Jayadratha. Now I am despairing." Karna did not agree. "I do not think you should blame the preceptor. Heedless of his own life, he fights our enemies furiously. It is not his fault that he failed to prevent Arjuna, guided by Krishna, from fulfilling his vow. Clad in impenetrable armor and wielding the Gandiva bow, he is formidable. It was no wonder to me that he overcame Drona. Furthermore, the preceptor is old and not so agile and quick. How can he contend with Arjuna on equal terms?" Karna and Drona were riding out on their chariots as they spoke. Ahead of them, in the distance, they saw the Pandava forces spread across the horizon. With their armor and weapons glinting in the sun, their army appeared like a sparkling sea. Their roars and conch blasts were answered by the Kauravas' warriors. Karna put on his helmet as he continued. "In my opinion, destiny is supreme. Despite our efforts and our numbers, and even though our army contains the greatest heroes, still, fate makes our endeavor futile. O king, a man afflicted by adverse fate finds all his exertions useless. We have constantly antagonized the Pandavas, yet they have always emerged unharmed. I do not see that they are superior to us in either intellect or power, nor do I feel that you have miscalculated through lack of understanding. It is fate alone that controls everything. If destiny has decreed that we should suffer reversals, then nothing in our power can alter that fact." Duryodhana remained silent. Perhaps Karna was right. Fortune had surely favored the Pandavas, but fortune was always flickering. Surely it was time it favored him. Drona had sworn to annihilate the Panchalas and Somakas and the major remnant of the Pandava army. If he kept his vow, then they might still attain victory. The prince clenched his teeth and looked at Drona, who was busy marshalling the troops into formation. It would not help if he censored him any more. Duryodhana's chariot reached the other Kuru leaders, and he issued orders and made arrangements. Having agreed upon a strategy for the day's fighting, the Kauravas formed themselves into an array shaped like a turtle. In response, the Pandavas aligned their troops in an arrangement resembling a shark. The two armies came together, cheering, their weapons clashing as a huge cloud of dust rose above the battlefield. Determined to end the conflict as quickly as possible, Bhima sought out the remaining Kaurava princes. As he charged into the enemy ranks, he was surrounded by elephants and horsemen, who drained down their weapons on the roaring Pandava. As a fierce battle began, Drishtadyumna and the twins rushed against the Madraka army. Susharma and the remainder of the Samshaptakas, remembering their vow, challenged Arjuna. Satyaki stayed close to Yudhishthira, protecting him along with Shikhandi and other chariot fighters. Drona encountered the Panchalas and showered them with tens of thousands of arrows. Invoking celestial weapons, he cut swiftly them down. A powerful king named Sibi, charging at the head of the Somakas, roared out his battle cry and challenged Drona. He struck him with 30 arrows and slew his charioteer. Drona was infuriated and replied with 10 arrows made of steel. He slew Sibi's 4 horses, cut down his standard, and severed the king's head as he stood in the fight. Duryodhana ordered another charioteer into Drona's chariot, and Drona continued to fight the Panchalas and Somakas together. Bhima was surrounded by a number of Kaurava princes. They assailed him from all sides with arrows. Not concerned about their attack, Bhima jumped down from his chariot and ran over to one of them. Leaping onto his chariot, he smashed him with his fist. With all his limbs broken, the prince toppled lifeless from his chariot. Bhima leapt down and raced over to another prince, striking and killing him in the same way. Karna came to the Kauravas' protection, hurling a flaming dart at Bhima as he ran across the field. Bhima faced that dart and caught it, immediately hurling it back at Karna. As it flew towards Karna, Shakuni cut it down with a razor-headed shaft. Oblivious to the Kauravas' arrows, Bhima caught hold of another prince and killed him with one mighty slap. He then remounted his chariot and blew his conch. With a volley of gold-winged shafts, he smashed the chariot of Durmada, another of Duryodhana's brothers. Durmada ran over to his brother's Dushkarna's chariot and leapt aboard. Both princes stood together, firing their straight-flying arrows at Bhima by the hundreds. Bhima rushed at Dushkarna and demolished his chariot with a single mace blow. The two princes jumped clear, but Bhima leapt down and pounded them with his fist. Struck repeatedly by Bhima, they both fell dead, their bodies pulverized. Seeing Bhima ranging among them like an all-destroying tempest, the Kauravas cried out in fear. Surely this is Rudra himself come as Bhima for our annihilation. Let us flee for our lives. The soldiers ran wildly from Bhima. No two were seen to be running together as they fled without looking back. Returning to his chariot, Bhima fought with Duryodhana, Kripa and Karna. As he battled alone, a number of other Pandava warriors came to his support and a violent struggle ensued. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Somadatta encountered Satyaki. Enraged at his son's slaughter, the Kuru leader bellowed, "Why, O Satvata hero, have you forgotten the religious codes of warfare and taken to evil practices? How can a virtuous person strike one who has laid aside his weapons? This will lead to your downfall. O mean-minded one, you will now suffer the consequences of your vile act. I swear by my two sons that I will either kill you or be killed by you today. If this does not come to pass, then may I fall into dreadful hell. Stand ready, wretch, for I will now let go my deadliest weapons." Somadatta blew his conch and roared like a lion. Satyaki was infuriated by his speech and he thundered back, "O descendant of Kuru, I am not afraid of you or your empty words. Why should one conversant with Kshatriya duty quake when confronted by such threats? Fight to your utmost power, either alone or with your supporters, and I will slay you. I killed your son along with many other powerful Kurus. Indeed, They have all been slain by the anger of the virtuous and ever truthful Yudhishthira. Having chosen him as your enemy, O Lord of men, you too will follow the path they have taken. Guard yourself. I swear by Krishna's feet and by all my past pious acts that I will kill you today. Both men began to discharge volleys of arrows. Observing the fight from a distance, Duryodhana sent a large division of horsemen to support his old uncle. 10,000 of them hemmed in Satyaki and covered him with arrows. Drishtadyumna saw Satyaki's possession and came to his aid, along with a great force of Pandava warriors. A deafening tumult arose as the two armies met. Somadatta concentrated his attack on Satyaki, sending a cluster of blood-sucking shafts at him. The Vrishni hero responded with arrows that pierced Somadatta's armor and made him swoon. His charioteer carried him away from the fight. Drona rushed into the battle hoping to slay Satyaki. Shouting out his battle cry, he hurled powerful weapons at the Vrishni warrior who was contending with the thousands of other fighters all around him. Yudhishthira and the twins, seeing Satyaki under attack by Drona, rode in anger and entered the fight. They assailed Drona from all sides and diverted his attack from Satyaki. Bhima and Drishtadyumna joined them, and Duryodhana, Karna and Kripa came to support the Kauravas. With the heroes on both sides, backed by numerous troops, a fierce and confused fight ensued. Arrows, darts, lances, and other weapons flew through the air, maces collided in showers of sparks, and swords clashed. Wrathful warriors hacked and lunged at each other. The heads, limbs, and entrails of slain warriors covered the ground. With screams and roars, they fell upon each other, blinded by rage. Some way off, Ghatotkacha was moving across the field. The Rakshasa was mounted on an 8-wheeled chariot made of black iron and spread with bear skins. Furnished with all types of weapons, it emitted a terrifying noise as it moved across the field. It was a celestial chariot, and it was drawn by beasts of the underworld who resembled elephants but who had horns and blazing red eyes. On its banner was a great black vulture with outspread wings and feet, and it gave off frightful screeches. Around its side were red flags and rows of bones. Ghatotkacha stood on the chariot like a dark mountain. With his long fangs and arrow-shaped ears, unnatural eyes, and bald head, his sight sent the Kaurava troops dashing away in terror. He was surrounded by an Akshahuni of Rakshasa warriors, armed with maces, spears, rocks, and trees. They advanced into the battle with roars that shook the earth. Seeing him advance, Ashwathama came before him. Proud of his ability with weapons, he stood unmoving as the Rakshasas approached. Ghatotkacha laughed and used his mystic powers to make a shower of rocks fall on Ashwathama and the soldiers supporting him. With the stones fell arrows, spears, axes, and clubs. Releasing an arrow charged with mantras, Ashwathama checked the downpour. Ghatotkacha then released 50 shafts that dug into Ashwathama's armor and body. Drona's son, maintaining his equilibrium, replied with a dozen arrows that cut into the Rakshasas. Ghatotkacha, rocked by the assault, took up a 1,000-spoked wheel with a razor-sharp edge. It shone like fire and was studded with gems. Spinning it, the Rakshasa hurled it with Ashwathama. With 20 crescent-headed shafts, Ashwathama broke the wheel to pieces. It fell uselessly to the ground like the purposes of a man under the influence of Edward's destiny. Ghatotkacha followed the attack with a volley of shafts that completely covered Ashwathama. The Rakshasa's son, Anjana Parva, then came to his side and joined the assault. On Ashwathama, he attacked him with hundreds of long arrows fitted with barbed heads and soaked in oil. Swallowed by shafts, Ashwathama appeared like Mount Meru, drenched by a shower of rain. His charioteer swiftly wheeled his chariot around, and as he came clear on the onslaught, he released an arrow that cut down Anjana Parva's standard. With 2 more shafts, he slew his 2 charioteers. He then killed the horses, and with another razor-faced arrow cut apart his bow. Anjana Parva leapt from his chariot, brandishing a scimitar embellished with golden stars. But he had hardly fixed his gaze on Ashwathama before Drona's son cut the weapon apart with 3 arrows. The Rakshasa took up a mace decked with gold. Swinging it around, he hurled it at Ashwathama, who broke it to pieces with his arrows. Anjana Parva jumped into the sky and rained down trees and rocks onto his opponent. At the same time, Ghatotkacha fired thousands of fire-tipped shafts at Ashwathama. Simultaneously countering Ghatotkacha's attack and fighting Anjana Parva, Ashwathama shot arrows into the air which pierced Anjana Parva all over his body. As the Rakshasa descended to the ground, Ashwathama released a broad-headed shaft with all his strength. Empowered by mantras, the shaft tore off Anjana Parva's head, which fell to the earth like a black boulder, its bright earrings gleaming like seams of gold. Shaking with grief and rage, Ghatotkacha roared, "Stand and fight! You will not escape alive from me today." Ashwathama lowered his bow and replied derisively, "O celestially powerful one, you should fight with others. As Bhima's offsprings, you are like my son. It is improper for me to fight you, nor do I feel angry with you. Leave now while I still feel kindly disposed towards you. For a man excited by rage may kill even his own self." Ghatotkacha was even more incensed, and he seemed to blaze as he bellowed, "What? Am I like an ordinary man that you are trying to frighten me with your words? I am the emperor of the Rakshasas. My prowess is no less than that of the 10-headed Ravana. O son of Drona, stay for only a moment more in this fight, and I will put an end to your life." The maddened Rakshasa fired his long arrows at Ashwathama, but Drona's son struck them all down before they could reach him. Both warriors released clouds of arrows which appeared to fight each other in the sky. The shafts collided, creating sparks and fire that illuminated the battlefield. By his mystic power, Ghatotkacha disappeared from view and suddenly assumed the shape of a towering mountain abounding in peaks and trees. As its summit was a fountain that incessantly showered spears, darts, swords, and heavy clubs. Remaining calm, Ashwathama invoked the Vajra weapon, which destroyed the Rakshasa's illusion. Ghatotkacha again appeared in the sky wielding his bow. With his numerous gold ornaments, he seemed like a blue cloud adorned with a rainbow. He invoked a weapon that sent a thick shower of rocks into Ashwathama. The heavy stones shook the earth as they fell. Reciting ancient incantations, Ashwathama at once invoked the Vayavya weapon. Unlimited numbers of arrows flew from his bow and smashed all the rocks as they fell from the sky. With the divine wind weapon, Ashwathama went on to assail the Rakshasa army and destroyed thousands of them. Ghatotkacha returned to the ground and mounted his chariot surrounded by a host of Rakshasas who had the heads of lions and tigers and rode upon fearful-looking animals. He charged. Ashwathama stood firm as the hordes rushed towards him, screaming in discordant voices. Led by Bhima's son, they appeared like an army of hideous-looking ghosts and spirits with Rudra at their head. Ghatotkacha released 10 arrows that struck Ashwathama like thunderbolts. Ashwathama rocked in his chariot but kept his balance. Ghatotkacha fired another shaft that broke Ashwathama's bow, but he strung another one in a matter of seconds. By means of celestial weapons, he shot hundreds of thousands of sky-ranging shafts with golden wings. Sorely oppressed by those arrows, the Rakshasa forces looked like a herd of elephants attacked by a lion. The shaft fell upon their broad chest and arms, piercing through their armor and digging into their leathery skins. Ashwathama became like Shiva when he had destroyed the powerful Asura Tripura in a long past age. His celestial weapons claimed the lives of countless Rakshasas. More and more of the demons appeared on the battlefield, rising up from the regions to join Ghatotkacha. They rushed in a body at Ashwathama, wielding spiked maces, scimitars, clubs, lances, axes, and many other weapons unknown to men. They hurled them at Drona's son and roared exultantly. Seeing all the weapons falling on Ashwathama, the Kauravas felt distressed. But Drona's son soon dispelled the attack with thousands of his own shafts. He emerged from the shower of missiles and destroyed the Rakshasas by celestial weapons. Fiery darts from his bow consumed the Rakshasa army. Ashwathama annihilated Ghatotkacha's forces. With his eyes rolling in anger, Ghatotkacha ordered his charioteer to charge Ashwathama. He discharged arrows like poisonous serpents at Ashwatthama and checked his attack, completely covering Drona's sons with shafts resembling long, barbed poles. Ghatotkacha sent up a great roar. Other warriors entered the fight, some supporting Ghatotkacha and others Ashwatthama. Drishtadyumna came up to Ghatotkacha while Shakuni and his followers supported Ashwatthama. Drupad and his army attacked the Kauravas surrounding Duryodhana, with Bhima following him on his chariot, his mace whirling as he rushed into the battle. As a fervent battle ensued between the armies, Ashwatthama suddenly released a shaft that looked like a rod held by death personified. Charged with the force of Indra's thunderbolt, it struck Ghatotkacha on the chest and threw him on the ground. Drishtadyumna saw him fall and he quickly took him up onto his own chariot and carried him away. Thus ends part 2 of the Mahabharata series, chapter 19, the Kauravas rally. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.